Okie doke, so now I'm just going to go through your last bunch of settings for, partly for rendering, but also really to give you an idea how to get this to work with your perspectives in Photoshop. So I'll quickly have a look at camera views again, just to maybe tie in with what you were looking at with Saul, doing 1-point and 2-point perspectives. So if you want to make a 1-point perspective, do you know what to do in this space? I'm going to put my camera there. That's right, parallel to a wall. So it reminds you that 1 point really only makes sense with rectilinear spaces. If you've got walls that are at bizarre angles, it's very difficult to do a 1 point. But there you can see I can easily make the target line parallel to the wall, open it up, and that is clearly 1 point. So I'll do a 2-point. So a 2-point would be virtually any other angle. So if I do it at an angle 45 degrees is a good one, because that's easy to work with when you get into Photoshop, right? Because this line here is equal to the angle going the other way if you bring it out far enough. So that and that, well, roughly equal. I have to change the angle a bit, but it can be a good way of working. With this space though, I might want an angle in between. So I might choose my camera again near the corner there, but this time make my field of view in line with the wall. So play with some different camera angles. You can make as many cameras as you want in Revit, and then make sure you know about the field of view. So by bringing these sides out, you're widening the field of view. You're not moving the camera back. So the camera's staying in place, and these angles out on the side are widening, which means in camera terminology, you're widening the field of view, or in other words, changing the focal length, or changing what people say, you're changing the lens. So if you've seen 20mm photographs as opposed to 50mm, would you know what the difference would be if you had a 20mm lens? Yes, exactly. 50 is pretty close to your eye. 20 is what they use for interiors, and it's much wider. Okay, so that's in realistic. And then if I go back to shaded, just so it goes a bit faster, I just want to remind you the steering wheel can be good to modify camera views. So over here, this navigation wheel, I call it steering wheel. You've got some options there if you click on the down arrow, and I just make sure you're there on full navigation wheel. Click on that, and then one of the most useful options when you have a camera is the walk option. So if you click and hold down with walk, you've got a little target that comes up. So I'm just pressing down and not moving the mouse at all. Now I'm going to bring this forward, and notice if I lift the cursor up from that target, it'll walk forwards. So it's like a joystick, that target. If I walk backwards from there, bring it down, it'll walk backwards, and I'll hit a wall, and now I'm outside. So unlike the field of view where I was widening the view to see more, in this case I'm walking backwards to see more. And you can use that to move your camera around the space fairly easily. Pan also moves the camera left, right, up and down. Up, down is a good one, just to lift the camera directly up or down. So remember what Saul was saying about the eye height being on the horizon line. So the horizon would be about here. So if you lift the camera up a little bit, that would be about right. But if you have a camera that's down low, then the eyes of the people will be above the horizon line. Same if you lift the camera up high, then the eyes of the people will be below the horizon line. And sometimes camera shots from down low work better if you've got for an interior, because you're going to see the planning more than what's on the ceiling. But just have a look at your space and decide which height works best for you. But remember, if you do make it higher or lower, then your entourage will be affected. Okay, so going back to realistic, and I can get an idea how that will render. So, open up my render dialog box, and just like before, I'm going to set it to interior artificial only, render, and on draft, it should go through pretty quickly still. And so, have many of you tried rendering with the cloud? No? I would highly recommend it. So it's still worth setting up this way, because the more work you do here, then the better your result's going to be when you go to render it in the cloud. Okay, so I've got that set up and rendering something. Now I'm going to go to adjust exposure and increase the brightness so I can see with a bit more light, and I can always go back if I need to add more lights in. So I might just copy that row of lights, and it'll tell me that some of these lights can't be copied because I've got a void area there. Not a problem. Delete instances, and I can just copy the ones that that can be copied. So with downlights, you will often need quite a few of them. So again, same thing here. I can't copy all of those lights, but the ones that can be copied, I'll do. Right, so back to my perspective. And then again, I can go and render on draft just to get a basic idea of the lighting levels. Right, so once that's working, then you can increase the quality. So on draft, it still may look pretty terrible, even when you get the lighting levels about right, because you'll have a lot of extremes. You'll have still maybe some dark areas and some areas that are too bright. But as you increase the quality, it'll balance those out. So here you can see there are some very bright areas, and then some other areas that are still maybe too dark. But that's okay, they will largely be balanced out. Maybe it's even still a tiny bit bright, so I'm going to go adjust exposure and reduce that brightness just a little bit. So now, by increasing the quality, even just a medium, I should get a really good idea how the lighting's going to look, and it still won't take a huge amount of time to render. So you can definitely get really good results just using this rendering engine, and if you set it to high, it should be pretty good. If you have time to render it on best, which will take some time, it will look great and probably as good as the cloud, but it'll take time. So it might take, if you've got a complex model, it could take easily a couple of hours just to render one image. And if you think that's bad, we used to allow, you might have heard me say before, a couple of days to render a perspective for years, up until just a couple of years ago. That was normal. Yeah.
That was normal a few years ago.
Yeah. So, you're lucky, and you've got the cloud, which will do it in the same thing in 15 minutes. Yep. So you just need to set it up here, get it working, and but then there's one last thing we need to look at. So you've got the quality, and as I was saying, I'm only doing it on medium. You should have time to at least do it on high, or maybe even best, which would be really good, or send it to the cloud. Okay, so once it gets up to 50, then we'll see something on the first 50%. They used to show you what it's doing is calculating the bounce lighting, and because people got a bit worried and didn't know what they were seeing, and I think it was just confusing some people, they decided just to hide it, which I think is a shame, because it was a good thing, I think, to see how that was all being done. But now you can see, so even on medium, this light is much better. Maybe a tiny bit bright on the wall, but still a lot better than it was. You can tell hopefully it's a lot more balanced. Okay, so again, on medium, it'll be okay, but on best, it'll be far better. Even on high, it should be good enough. Okay, so that's your quality, but then there's another setting that affects your quality. So you've got this quality option here where it's just set to different presets, and if you're interested in rendering, then you can have a look at, I'll just show you quickly how you see all of the settings. I'll just let this go through. That white thing you can see on the projector there, that's actually part of that's the sun. That's not part of my image. That's our real sun. So people watching the video won't know what I'm talking about. That's not part of the render. Okay, so again, on just on medium. When you go to high, much better. Best will be excellent. Now that again is your quality setting, and if you go to edit there, we'll look at these settings much more in another subject, but have a look down through there and you can see you can actually fine-tune all these different rendering settings, which will come in handy. You'll see later. They're not that difficult because you can see here from the little pictures they give you what these all do. And they are useful, believe it or not. But for now, I'm just going to leave it on medium. So again, that's quality using the presets. But then, which of these other settings here would you think might affect the overall quality of your image if you've been using Photoshop? Exactly. Your DPI is your resolution. That's spot on. So it's in output settings here. You've got resolution at the moment set to screen. And that simply means what I'm looking at here, the number of dots on my screen, how many pixels this takes up, are what determine the size here. So if I zoom out, notice how those numbers change. So it's really just a, an on-the-fly setting for when you're setting up your render. But then to get your final output quality, you need to go to Printer and then set the resolution. And this is how you tie it in with your image size in Photoshop. So have you had a look at that option in Photoshop using image size? Let's go and have a look at it. Okay, so I'm going to go and make a new file in Photoshop. So you've been told for your image here you need to make an A3 sized image at 300 dpi. Okay, that's the first step in this handout. So do you know how to do that in Photoshop? Sorry? You have to... Yeah, so here, in these steps here. Okay, so it's fairly easy. In Photoshop now, I can just go to New from the File menu. So there's all the options. When you go to New, you can set the size, either by choosing all the options here, or under Document Type, set it to Paper, International Paper, choose A3, so that's half the battle one. We've got the width and the height of an A3 page. And so we're going to switch those around. So that's on Portrait. So if we go to 420 wide by 297 high, and then the resolution there is already on 300. Okay, so that easy. Click OK. And we've got an A3 page. More importantly, it's at 300 dpi. And now to see that pixel count, I'm going to go to Image and then Image Size. And I'm going to change the width here to millimetres. That's what I want to say, pixels. There we are. So that can give you an idea of the image size you should have in Revit to achieve the same size in Photoshop. So notice how it's fairly high if you know what these numbers mean. 4961 by 3508. Do those numbers mean anything to you? Sorry? Yeah, you probably will. Not for this subject, but for your boards you will, yeah. So, do you know how big your TV resolution is? Yeah, you know what it is. You see it all the time when you're changing the channels. Most TVs tell you, they'll say something like 1920 or 1080, which are the same thing. 1920 is the width, 1080 is the height. So that's HD resolution. That's more than double. 4900 by 3500 is more than double that. So it's double HD, a bit more than double HD. So that's high. When you see numbers like that, you should be thinking that's a lot of pixels. So, by rights though, if you're rendering out of Revit, you should take it that high. Now, you won't always have the time to do it, so try and get as close as you can, but at least be aware that you need to take it higher than in Photoshop. So if I render out with these pixel dimensions, 1500 by 700, then it's much higher than on screen. On screen it was only 900 by 500. So now going up to 1500 by 780, that is a bit under double in each direction, which means it's going to be a much bigger file. So there it's 1.9, here it's 4.6, so that's more than double the size, which means more than double the render time. But it will be better quality. So that affects the quality as well as this quality setting up here. Higher resolution equals higher quality. But you just got to allow the render time. Now, to get it to the resolution that we have in Photoshop, this is why sometimes you just need to cheat and scale it up in Photoshop because you won't have time otherwise. But I'll show you how. If you want to get it to that resolution, the trick in Revit is to set the image to that size. This is what a lot of people don't realise. When you render, notice here you've got the width and the height in millimetres. 259 by 132 millimetres. Where do you think that number's come from? It's not just a random number. Yeah, the pixels come from there. So where's this number? So the pixels come from the width and the height. Where's the width and the height come from? It is, that's right, it's the frame of that image. Right now, so that does have a starting size, and that's good to be thinking about that. So that's the initial size of the camera view, and then I've widened it by stretching the field of view out, so it's become a bit bigger. But you need to be able to control that. When you're placing your images on the page, in your sheets, you need to know the size of this view. And again, when we're rendering here, we need to know that size in millimetres and how to change it. So you just need to select your border, your frame, or your crop region, and go to size crop. So there we are, there are the numbers, 259 by 132. I'm not going to just change those because that would change the field of view, so it's just like stretching it out on the sides the way I did at the beginning. If I just want to make this bigger without changing the field of view, you've got the option here, scale lock proportions. So the width then, well, we know an A3 page is 420 across, so I'll try that, 420. And then the height is 215. So it's a bit less, but that's okay because proportionally this image won't fit onto an A3 exactly. We're going to have some white at the top and the bottom. And if you want to do dynamic edges, then you maybe want to have some white all the way around. So we could take this down to 400. And then again, the height will change automatically because it has the lock proportions option. So if I click OK, it'll zoom in, but the image itself hasn't changed. What's inside the frame is exactly the same. But then notice here, it's got 399 by 204 for the width and the height. And if I set 300 dpi, we're getting something close to the number of pixels I had in Photoshop. Now I'll hit render just to show you what will happen. I might just save the file here because it could even crash. Oh, great. Did I go open? No, save as. Yeah, that should. Okay, I think we're out of space on. Oh yeah, I've got a 7. Sorry, yeah, you're right. Oh, because I've got yeah, you're right. I've got a 7 on another computer. Totally forgot. Thanks. Okay, so I'll just set this rendering just to give you an idea. So even on medium, it'll take some time. Okay, but that's actually okay because it gives me some time to go into Photoshop and show you a few things there. Okay, so I've got a white background there, and that's a good thing, but I'm going to make a new layer and then turn the background off. So the new layer button you have down there in your layers panel, if you don't have layers on, do you know how to get the layers panel up? Yeah, window, layers. Okay, so by turning the background off, I can see my checkerboard, which shows me transparency. And I'll show you an easy way of getting the park you have next to this building. Probably sure a lot of you would have guessed already, but I'll show you anyway. So where are we? Myrtle Street is up here somewhere. There it is. So if you know the name of the park, you could probably Google the name of it and you might even find photos people have taken. Or you can go down and take some photos yourself. But Mr. Street View will often do a pretty good job. It's a very simple thing, but can make it much better when you're looking through your windows to what's really there. So, anyone know what this park's called? Peace Park. Okay, let's see if we can find some better ones. Just while that's rendering, it'll take a minute. Might as well have a look. Is it Chippendale? Yeah. Okay, so they might even be better. Some of those are not that park, but let's just see. So what's this one? That looks like it from the other angle. Okay, so I'll grab that. So I'll put these into your folder. And so I did a screen capture of the street view using Control Print Screen, and now I'm going to make a new file in Photoshop, and notice it'll bring up this option clipboard, so I can just click OK and then paste, and it'll paste in what I had in Street View. So I might just crop that. Don't really want that power box, but it should be cut out anyway. Okay, so back into Revit, and it's still going. So I'm actually going to cancel that one, but I just want to give you an idea. It will take some time when you set that sort of resolution But that would be good if you can set it to that higher resolution. I'm going to go back to screen and do it on that because that will be much, much quicker. And I actually have one I did earlier that I might use if that's taking too long. But what I wanted to show you there is how you can put backgrounds in to your windows. Now, I don't know if I'm going too quickly with Photoshop, but I'm assuming most of you can make layers and do things like that. Good, okay. So, and I've shown you the Alex Hogreef site. I'll just remind you though, in case you haven't looked at that, again while it's rendering. So Alex, H-O-G-R-E-F-E. And then, because I won't have time to go through adding people and doing those other things you need for your photo montage, just go to his tutorials page. Adding people is the first one there. Interior elevations, another really good one. Right, so these really nice lit views. So the lighting there is really nicely done. And it looks like it's 3D rendered, but it's not. That's just Photoshop rendering techniques. So people think it's all got to be done in 3D. In Photoshop. Yeah, you've got two options. So you've got the lighting tools, but even just the burn and dodge tools and the brush tools as well work well for some things. So a lot of it, if you see the where are we? Sorry. Ambient occlusion. So ambient shadows like this. Again, that looks 3D rendered, but it's not. That's done with Photoshop. Right, so those are it's the ambient shadows that give it the depth. The straight shadows are easy, but then it's the ambient shadows, the ones in the corners where objects are close together, that are painted using the just the brush tool. So that's the image, and then it's just been painted on using Photoshop. So you don't need to 3D render everything. Just use it where it's going to help you, and then Photoshop will often be a better option for some things. Okay, so there we are. So that's rendered, and now to bring that into Photoshop, you can use export. So save to project, still a good one, just to get a copy of this saved in your Revit file. But export, of course, will give you the option of exporting it to a format you can use in Photoshop. And you've got these different options here for the format. So which option have you been using? Yeah, JPEGs are good for small files and nice, quick, easy way of saving. But if you're going to work in Photoshop, I'd highly recommend using either TIFF or the one I'm going to show you now, PNG. So I'm going to save as PNG, Portable Network Graphics, and then go into Photoshop, open, and there's my file. Right, so notice how when you open it, well, let's open the JPEG to show you the difference. So there's the JPEG, there's the PNG. JPEG, PNG. So you can see the difference, I'm sure. That's right, the background's done for you. So you don't have to cut that out manually. Revit does that. And in PNGs, it's pretty much automatic. It'll do it with TIFFs as well, but PNGs are even easier. Right, so to bring that into my base file, Control A, Control C. So Control A selects all, Control C copies to the clipboard. I'll go back to my A3 page, and then Control V. That's pasting it into my layer. No, that's not right. It should be doing a new layer. So what option? Anyhow, I'll just make another layer. So I want to make a new layer and then paste, and that's odd. Yeah, paste in place. Okay, so it's defaulting to paste. Anyhow, so try and get that onto its own layer, and then to stretch it, notice how it's much smaller because it's at the original resolution. If I'd rendered it at the higher resolution, it would have taken up most of this area. Okay, so Control T. Sorry, going onto the right layer, Control T, and I can then transform it. Just going to hold down Shift while I stretch that so that it keeps the proportions. It's really important, otherwise if it's different proportions to the original, then you'll be in big trouble. Okay, so we've got there the A3 sheet now, and I want to put the background. So again, going into this one, Control A, Control C, and then we go to the layer below the one I want it to go into. So I want it to go above layer 1 here. So Control V, I don't know what it's going to defaulting to paste into. So let's go to paste in place. No, that's really weird. Yeah, no, there's just someone's changed an option here, but yeah. So anyhow, I'll just make a new layer. So Control V, there we go, and Control T, and stretch that. Okay, so there we are. So we've got a background there. It's very dark. So I can go to Image, Adjustments, and either Brightness, Contrast, or Exposure, and play with that. Okay, so that easy to get your backgrounds in. If I don't like that one, I can just go to the other file. Just save for you here. Okay, so again, Control A, Control C, and Control V. Now it's pasting. Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. Now it's pasting properly. There we go. Right. No, so this is easy. This is the fun stuff when you've got everything done in your view, and makes you realise that sometimes it's easy to go and do too much work and make things take a lot longer than they should because not doing things in the right order. So people will focus too much on the model and try and model in every design idea they've got and think about the way it's going to be built in their mind, instead of thinking about what is going to be on the sheet. And that's why everyone will tell you, set the views up early, before the design's finished. Well before the design's finished. I know it might not make sense at first, but this is the way you do it. You set the views up, then you do the design, usually. So you can still change the views later, but you want to have an idea what you're working towards. So you've got to have, in this case, just a 1 point or a 2 point perspective. Then you know which areas to focus on and do all of your modelling. There's no point modelling things that aren't going to be seen anywhere. If you're modelling inside cabinets and modelling the underside of stairs and modelling in, I mean, remember I said before that the gap between the ceiling and the floor here is a problem. So you might have thought, well, okay, that's a problem, I've got to fill that in. Well, you don't have to, because I can't see it there. Who's going to know? We're not going to worry about those things. We only care what's showing in your views. Right? So if it's not showing in your perspectives, and it's not showing in your floor plans, and it's not showing in the sections, you choose where the sections go through. So don't take them through those areas where things are missing. And that tells you what work you need to do. Otherwise you just do way too much work and it'll slow you down and you just won't finish in time, because these are big projects, big spaces, and you need to manage your time and just do the work that's required. So easy. Okay, so same thing with those. Cut away the things that don't look good or hide them. So here I've got a section box. Okay, so I get an angle that I want. I maybe don't have the part of this building done to the level I'd want. So I'll bring this back the other way. Oops. Okay, so this axo might just focus on one level. Axonometric doesn't mean the whole building. So you might have one just to show that that particular level. Yeah. Yeah, but if they're stacked on top of each other, that'd be difficult. So why not do two? Why not do one for each level? And do an exploded axonometric? Yeah, well, I'll quickly show exploded. That's easy. So you've got tools for that in Revit too. So, okay, let's just show you this. Okay, so that one, you can see, is almost like a plan showing things projected at 3D, in 3D at an angle. Yeah, so realistic's good, shaded, whatever you think looks good. Doesn't have to be rendered. Yeah, no, they don't have to be rendered. In fact, I wouldn't render them. And realistic's good enough, usually. Maybe with shadows. Yeah, hidden line's good as well. Graphically, if it works for your project, not a problem. Yeah, that's right. So they can, hidden line can look really good. So you've got all those different options. And yes, I will show exploded, because exploded sounds hard, but it's actually really easy now with the new tools in Revit for that. So I've just made a copy of my original view, and I'll call it exploded axo. Okay, so if I want to do the, well, I'll just do one of the building there. So I'll turn on my section box and cut away that front wall. Oops. In fact, I'll take away those shelves. Oops. I'll hide this. Okay, so now to do an exploded axo, you need to select the object that you want moved, and then this option here comes up, Displace Elements. Okay, so I'll show you again. So you just need to select something, and then it's in the view panel here you have Displace Elements, and you get this gizmo. Generally you're going to be using the Z arrow, which is the blue one. Bring that up. Now it's not moving. If I go to the other 3D view, it hasn't moved. It's only in this view. So then I can say, right, I want this floor to come up as well. And the walls there I would have up on that level as well. And so I've got these walls here which are on the level below. Okay, so I might just quickly tidy those up. Okay, so those, and my ceiling and my floor, and yeah, that'll do for now. I'll bring up, in fact I'll get the ceiling below as well, and I'll displace those the same way, just dragging them up. And so then I've left this part out, but now I can go and select this. So this is all one set. That's the first floor, and then so it should be coming up with the edit option. There we go. So then edit. and I've got the option to add, so I can add these other elements to that set. So I can add these stairs to that set, right? And then okay, so I can finish that one, and then this floor here I can go edit and add these other stairs. Right, so again, finish. Okay, so that can be a bit difficult to read because it's all split apart. So now finally you've got the option to add in paths. So I can then put in projection lines that take it back to where they've come from. Okay, so there we are. Okay, so if you take more time and break it up a little bit better, it would be even clearer. But hopefully it can give you an idea how you can split your models apart, and that's a common view that used to be done a lot when things were all hand-drawn. And again, you've got all the tools in Revit there for you to do that. So split axos can work really well, and you can use the same graphics, so you can use realistic or whatever other graphics modes you want for those. You can still, of course, change the viewing angle after you've made them. I'd say that might even be clearer with a space like this if you're doing it at an angle like that. Okay, so that might give you some ideas. So it's one of those tools that's been in Revit for a while, but not everyone has really investigated fully. Okay, so that should be plenty anyway to get you set up with your perspectives and the things you need in Photoshop. Actually, it's not experimenting, but the main thing there is to get your perspectives into Photoshop from Revit. Oh yeah, so the very last thing, I promise, is line work. So this is rendered, but if I go back to hidden line, sometimes it's useful to have the lines as well. So to do that, it's still probably easiest to use PDF. So just print to PDF. And if you do zoom 100%, remember we've set the size. Oh, you can if you want to. Yeah, yep. Centering wouldn't hurt. Yep. Okay, so let's just call this something. Okay, so remember when you go to open that in Photoshop, the size is there in the file. Okay, so there's the file. I'm going to leave all these settings. So it will line up exactly with this, but also I can just copy and paste it into the other one. So I might just clean this up a bit, get rid of some of these. So I'll make a new layer. And there you can see my lines over the top of the perspective, and I can just scale those. Yeah, if you want it to be more graphical and have an outline, you can put that over the top. So it should line up exactly with that border. So I'm just going to get one side. So you can see there, it fits exactly over the top. Yep, so here you can see those lines going over exactly. Okay, so it just gives a bit more punch. You can see the difference, which could be a good option for some of the views. And then you can always try fading out the render, and lots of other things you can try, filters, all sorts of things you can do to make it look a bit more graphical. So just play around and see what works. Okay, so sometimes things like that, maybe that's very bright, but you can go back now and bring that brightness down. Okay, so that should be plenty to get you to the point you need to be next week.